Hey, Scottsdale Living. Welcome to our latest podcast. Really excited to have Amber here, my partner, and Paul Taunton, who is a Scottsdale resident, the
hmm
president and founder of BIG, which is a business impact group, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit, Paul. I mean, how did you end up here in Scottsdale?
I fell in love with Scottsdale just in my younger years, coming out here with friends and
Sure.
golfing and things like that. I liked what the city offered because good restaurants, good sports,
Hmm.
just a lot of things to do, hiking and golf, obviously. So,
Sure.
so it checked a lot of boxes for me. So that's what I said. Someday this would be a great place to spend half the year. So I
Yeah.
spent 7 months of the year here, and 5 months I have a lake home up in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. Wow. So that you're doing the reverse. Most people are usually like 5 months here and seven up there, but you're loving the heat, huh?
Yeah, I like the heat. I
Yeah.
don't like the cold.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm kind of
With you on
over
that one.
that. You're right.
Totally.
Right.
100%. Um, Amber?
So I know that your business has a lot of great big names, NFL, Super Bowl, Microsoft. You guys do a lot of brand representation essentially. But one of the things that I really wanted to know was how you got your business in your adult life and a little bit about if this just came to you and if you had help or if you're really a self-made man.
I am so I almost have two lives because my first life I was a young man. Literally, I dropped out of college my junior year because I come from a lower middle income family, and I was paying for my own school with student loans at the time, and I just felt like what I was doing was I had no vision. I said, what do you graduate from this, and then what do you do? Do you do
Then
something
what?
related or unrelated?
Sure.
And I just felt like I was taking on this debt. So I ended up dropping out. I was an athlete and through my youth, played a lot of sports. So I was very familiar with athletic footwear and athletic apparel. And my brother and I have a twin brother, and we actually we played professional racquetball. So we were traveling around the country. I got introduced to the health club industry and did that for a little bit, managing a club. And then I started thinking about, hey, I need to get into retail. I need to find something with more focus, not something that I run with my brother, but something that I do independently. So I started applying for a small business loan.
Hmm.
I got it. My first loan was for $35,000, believe it or not. I had about 20 styles of shoes on the wall and about 15 styles of t-shirts in a small little strip
Yeah.
mall that was a buck 280 for rent, right?
Wow. So
So
it's a retail location. So
retail
yeah.
location in a tiny little dumpy strip mall.
Right.
But I came from a philosophy that, hey, you know what? People will drive across the parking lot from the big mall to save $5 on a pair of shoes.
Sure.
Plus, being an athlete growing up, I knew that I could talk the talk. Football players could come in or athletes could come in, and the parents knew that I was going to give them a good fit and give them good advice. And that was, I was blessed enough to get into an industry that was forgiving enough to the athletic industry. I mean, Nike was not a $25 billion company, or Reebok. And so all of a sudden you get into an industry that's virgin enough, allows a young entrepreneur to a little bit of learn as he goes. And I just got in just by the grace of God, I got in on an industry at the virgin level.
Wow.
And I
And
was
it
such a
took
little
off, man.
sponge. Yeah, I was
Wow.
such
Yeah.
a little sponge
Hmm.
and there was no plan B for me.
Sure.
Zero plan B. And so I just leaned into it and really learned. I opened and closed the store and learned retail. So after about 4 years, I actually opened two more stores. So I had three. And I remember sitting down with my managers and I said, hey, you guys, we're really onto something here. We're going to really bust loose. Now, at that time, I had paid back the small business loan, and the banker that I had done the small business loan really loved my story. And he
Hmm.
saw how hard I was working, and he saw the deposits we were making.
Sure.
So he saw the growth. So I got the financial backing from that banker, and 14 years later, opened 104 locations. Was the
Man, that's crazy.
largest privately held athletic footwear company in the U.S.
Wow.
And so the trajectory was like being shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
So timing is everything in business. I mean, it means a lot, but you gotta work and you gotta show
Sure.
up and you gotta really be diving into it. So I remember getting to a point. I said, "Man, I don't think this industry can get any better. It's just on fire." So I Immediately went back and remodeled like all of my stores, renegotiated great leases like on the 50-yard line of the mall so I could get top dollar.
Sure.
And then they started calling pretty soon. Finish Line's calling me, Athletic Express is calling me, Foot Locker's calling me, all these big publicly traded companies. I was the only privately held company out there with my size. I was in 17 states.
So you had a target on you.
It was great. I was a little darling in the room.
Sure.
So I remember, Foot Locker came to me. They were the biggest giant, and they were very confident, let's just say. But I remember I sat down. The guy flew from New York to Minneapolis, and he wanted to see a couple of stores, do a little road show with me, which I did. And then he wanted to fly back to New York. But he goes, "Hey, let's just do a little pit stop here." And I remember he made me an offer. He goes, "Hey, I'm gonna give you an offer. I'll write you a check right now for $30 million for your company."
Wow.
And I said,
"This is 25 years ago."
Yeah, this is. I mean, I didn't know. I had no coaching. There was no there was no blueprint for me. It's just completely instinctual.
And that was going to be one of my questions. Like, was somebody guiding you, mentoring you?
I was just a total.
The banker, maybe. He's you got something here.
Even the banker saw an opportunity to loan money.
Sure.
But he, I very quickly outgrew him.
Yeah.
And very quickly learned the finance side of the business.
Sure.
The Merrill Lynches of the world, people that can come back and be a little bit more resourceful.
Right.
But I remember I said to him, that's not going to make sense. I go, there's too many other companies that'll be interested in our business, so I'm not going to take the first offer that comes to me. He goes, that's a good answer. He goes, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Can you do me one favor? And I said, sure, I'll do that. He goes, just give me last call. And I said, okay, because you're the first one to come out here, I will give you last call. I go, I'll give you that respect.
Sure.
And the rest is history. So we went through all those other companies, made me offers. And I went back to Foot Locker and sold that company to Foot Locker. They wanted me to move to New York and run one of their companies.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, New York was not my jam. So I rejected them. And so they said, well, hey, you're going to be off the grid. You're going to have to, you're not going to be able to go back and be anywhere near this industry.
Sure.
So the day that my 5-year non-compete expired, I started BIG.
Fantastic.
So it's really two lives. Now BIG, I said, okay, I've done retail. It's a tough gig. It's it's B2C, business to consumer.
Sure.
And I just said that I've done that. I remember I was toying around with, hey, maybe a chain of like coffee shops.
Sure.
But then I said, that just doesn't float my boat anymore. I want to do something completely different. I want to be business to business. And I remember sitting there one night, I go, I got to think of a name for this. And I don't want it to be, Paul's Business, whatever, right?
Totally.
So I sat down and I said, I want to be in business. I want to work with businesses. So let's incorporate that into the name.
Sure.
I want to be relevant. I want to be able to impact their business in a positive way. And so then I said, business impact. And I said, group. Wow, the acronym BIG. So I remember,
perfect.
I remember when I had like 4 employees, right? And I said, hey, you guys, I go, the name of our company is Business Impact Group.
Right.
I said, not now. I said, but someday we will be known as BIG. Do not say that now, because there's 4 of us. I said, we don't want to be a legend in our own mind, so let's just chill out. I go, but that day will come. And I said, buckle your seatbelts. I go, we're going to be in the B2B space.
Sure.
And we're going to take the vocation that I learned in retail, which was how to do offshore manufacturing.
Sure.
And some of the other, how do you motivate employees? In fact, when I had the retail company, I had 3,500 employees.
Wow.
And so
crazy,
it's like, some days you're running a daycare center.
Yeah.
But,
right.
But the reality is that vocation, what I didn't know is the vocation that I gathered and I gained from that 14 years of retail was priceless, quite frankly.
For sure.
And really enabled me to get into this side of the business, B2B, and understand what we needed to do, what the trajectory, what the vision needed to be.
Sure.
Don't move too fast, be relevant. More is not better, all those sound bites.
So what's crazy to me is like, I get the retail part because you're athletic, you're a kid, you were in that realm, you've been in the clubs, right? But then when you get to the Business Impact Group, that's a totally different thing, right? I mean, that wasn't no experience, no history, just thinking I want to be a B2B business and how can I do it? Is that kind of how it came out?
It really was. I mean, I really had no experience in
Sure.
this. I said, I mean, that's such a general, marketing is such a general term, right? I mean, is it billboards? Is it TV? Is it radio spots? I mean, I said, no, I want to be something that you can touch. So so I remember I rented this small space and in this office park, and down the street was Super Value. So Super Value at that time owned Albertsons, Cub, all these grocery store chains, right?
Sure.
They were the biggest gorilla in that space. And I remember I walked into their headquarters, and I talked to their head of procurement. And now I have no idea what the pitch is, right? So I just said to him, I had went into one of their stores and I saw what they were wearing for uniforms, and they were just total dish rags, right?
Sure.
So I went in and I said, hey, introduced myself. I'm Paul Taunton, and I own Business Impact Group, and we're an offshore manufacturer, and we can do fulfillment, and I do cut and sew, and I would love to be invited to your next RFP when you bid out your uniform program. I said, I feel like I can not only build you a better garment, and I can also save you a lot of money.
Sure.
I said, because it's me and it's our factories offshore. I said, so we have QC. I believe I can be that person, but talk is cheap. So just invite me to your RFP, invite everybody you want.
Sure.
And let's see who the last man standing is. I said, I'm good either way, but I'm right down the street.
Right.
And did the RFP, and I mean, the dog caught the car, right? All of a sudden I got a $7 million client, right?
Like, how do I do this?
Oh my God.
Okay,
we're
here.
I remember now at that time, I probably had 7 employees, right?
Right.
So I remember they were excited because that was the shot in the arm. That was all of a sudden you got a $7 million client that pays their bills.
Right.
And we started with uniforms. Now BIG has morphed into something much more dynamic.
Sure.
We have 3 divisions. We do a division that does uniforms and branded swag. It doesn't matter if it's a North Face jacket or whatever it might be. Then we have employee engagement, which is a really hot button right now. And then the 3rd division is just basic ink on paper, a print division.
Okay.
So that's our 3 jams.
Sure.
And I always say, hey, we're not going to do anything unless we're great at it.
Right.
And we've pretty much stayed to that battle cry from day one. Like, hey, if we're not great at it, don't sell it, because business B2B is not forgiving. You can't get DirecTV's logo kind of right.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? You got to be
quality over everything.
Everything. I mean, 8 layers deep.
Sure.
And so you've got to be there, been there, done that. And so that's been a great ride, a great trajectory for sure, which I enjoy still doing it today.
So do you remember a point where you were like, oh my gosh, I'm failing at this, and if I'm going to be successful? Did that happen for you anywhere in either of these companies, but especially in Big? When were you like, I think I'm failing. We have to do this better. This is crucial. Here's the new learning opportunity.
I was fortunate enough after selling that first company that getting into the B2B space is not something. When I landed that big client, that might have been 8-9 months to a year down the road, and you take on a responsibility when you're a business owner. There's a huge responsibility. Like today, I employ about 150 people, so I really look at it when I show up that I have 150 families that rely on me to give good vision, hold good accountability, and
leadership,
and reward people for the fruits of their labor. Succession planning, things that, hey, they all want families, they all want nice things, and let's do it. But I'm a much better CEO today than I was when I was running retail. Sure. Because today I talk about balance, like balance in your family, balance in your life. Don't be a workaholic. That's that doesn't get you where you need to be. You need to be centered, balanced, happy, and you'll be twice as productive in half the amount of time.
Yeah. So how do you teach management style like that then? Because I mean, that's a culture that you bring all the way down through the business, right? How do you lead? How do you teach that?
I try to be really humble and straight up. I'm very transparent, so I don't play any games. When I talk to people, I say, hey, listen, sometimes I'll say, hey, this is just one man's opinion.
Right.
And I just try to keep it real. I mean, if you're real with people,
Mhm.
they pick up on that. Hey, you know what? The guy's a straight shooter. He's
Sure.
honest. He's not going to just blow smoke.
Mhm.
And I think that, and I tell my leadership team, even with 150 I have 12 direct reports that report to me.
Mhm.
And I tell them all the time, hey, listen, succession planning is a big deal. You have people that report to you. Don't let anybody slip through the cracks
Sure.
and be in your blind spot. Recognize overachievers, recognize hard work, recognize performance,
Mhm.
and communicate it.
Mhm.
Don't talk about it amongst your peers, talk about it to that person.
Sure.
And so that is something that's just part of our culture. We do a lot of fun things too. Like I'll take them on a boat cruise on Lake Minnetonka or
Sure.
whatever. We
Sure.
do enjoy the journey.
Yeah. So have you brought anybody here, or is it all everything's still based in Minnesota?
Everything is still based. Even in the months that I'm here, I fly back to Minneapolis about every 3 weeks.
Okay. Just check in
for a few days. Yeah.
Sure.
But I'm on Zoom calls and stuff like that
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I've got a great leadership team, so I don't need to be in the weeds so much anymore. I try to stay more on the visionary and critical meetings with key accounts and things like that.
Sure.
Is there some kind of like key lesson you really think like that has been a mantra of yours ever since the beginning? Or do you think that has really shifted as you've grown and learned? Because nobody goes into business and like they know everything. Every day I'm like, okay, there's 100 more things I need to really get better at constantly. Like you can't know it all. And you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. So was there something, or are there like maybe some lessons you can impart for people who are kind of just starting out, or they have a vision that they could be great, or they can do great things, or they can make wealth for themselves, but are they driven enough? Do they have what it takes? What would you leave them with?
I would say this, that a consistent, I guess, characteristic of my management style and my business style is that don't go into anything trying to be everything to everybody. Even when I opened my retail company, if you wanted hockey skates or a baseball bat, you had to go down the street. But I made a statement. I said, when you want athletic footwear or athletic apparel, I am going to be the Gandhi of
I love it.
that in our market.
Sure.
I don't care if it's Foot Locker or whatever. We morph that shoe wall that I said had 20 styles of shoes on day one, ended up having 300 styles by the time we hit our stride.
Right.
And so I stayed true to that. Hey, it's athletic footwear, it's athletic apparel. All the hard goods and all this stuff I'm not interested in. Even when I got in, when I migrated, sold that company, migrated and started BIG, it was the same thing. We started doing branded swag.
Mhm.
We didn't start with 3 divisions.
Sure.
But when you start onboarding these huge companies, I look for ways to be more relevant.
Mhm.
And I try to pick a relevant service that will speak to corporate America. So employee engagement
Mhm.
is white hot right now in the marketplace. There's a lot of companies out there that say, oh yeah, we have a years of service program. We have an engagement program. Yeah, but you know
Which
what?
is a plaque, right?
It's this, eagle plaque on the wall or some little saying. And the reality is that it's old school and it's outdated to the workforce that's out there today.
Sure.
We have our software and our strategy. It's effective. I mean, you look at Best Buy, right? 1,100 locations across the United States. We manage their employee engagement. So we got over 100,000 blue shirts out there that are engaged in our platform. And they've been a client of ours for over 18 years. Imagine all the in the procurement department, all the things that fell on the cutting room floor of things they didn't need.
Sure.
And our engagement program stood fast.
Mm-hmm.
And even to this day is a tool that they leverage to give shout outs, to give the management in that large organizations as large as that, the tools and the resources to reach out and touch. Because that's the biggest problem with a lot of these engagement programs that are incredibly outdated by some other people in our space, is that they don't give the management in the field the assets that they need to even properly recognize random acts of greatness.
Sure.
It is as simple as that. It's like you're working for the government. Some of these programs out there, you got to get in the weeds with them. It's got to be interactive.
Yeah. Understand a little bit for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. So kind of switch gears a little bit on, you touched on it for a minute, But how did you evolve with that work-life balance, right? Because I mean, when you're a young man, you're running the retail operation. I'm sure you're engaged. You're 18 hours a day grinding,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And now as you've evolved in your culture at Big, is a little more balance, right? So how is that? Is that a learning process? Is it an age thing? How did it happen for you?
For me, I think it came from just an individual value system.
Mm-hmm.
I think as you go through the journey of life, everybody's priorities shift, and what might have been really important to me early on, it's shifted, and it's different for everybody. It's a
Sure.
unique path that we all take. It's very individualized, and for
Mhm.
me, I just I can feel when I'm out of balance. I can feel it
Sure. Sure.
in my soul. I can feel it. I'm just not hitting on all cylinders, and so I'm very aware of that, and especially now the work life balance.
Mhm.
Especially now, I make sure that I take time for me because I
Mhm.
know that through my journey, called life,
Mhm.
I've given a lot of myself to my team members, and I need to take time for me,
Sure.
and that's part of the reason when I moved to Phoenix, that was my time that I needed to cast a bigger net. I wanted to meet more people.
Mhm.
I wanted to expand my horizons, not from a business sense, but from a social sense.
Sure.
Meet new relationships and
Mhm.
and things like that. I mean, that's my purpose. That's what I want. I want to enjoy the journey.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So along this journey, I mean, has there been somebody that really stands out in your mind, like a super influential person that you still either talk to or rely on or confide in, or has it kind of been you?
I've never had a mentor. I've never really been looking for a mentor.
Mhm.
I felt like in both the businesses that I was in, I wasn't following somebody else's path.
Mhm.
I just went with a gut feeling. And for me, the best way is to follow your gut is to basically be your worst critic.
Mhm.
So when I got into retail, I said, okay, hey, did I look at an individual? No, but I looked at companies that were doing it really well. And at that time, Foot Locker and Athlete's Foot, they were doing it really well.
Sure.
I said, hey, listen, you need to remake the wheel here. This is, but I immediately went after like middle markets. I didn't go after the Minneapolises or the
Right.
Phoenixes of the
Yeah.
world. I was going in populations of like 150,000 people or
Mhm.
less. And I would walk in there and would there still be a Foot Locker in there? Yeah, but I could compete with them.
Mhm.
It's not like in a major metro market where you've got 6 athletic stores within 5 blocks.
Sure.
So, and the cost of advertising is outrageous.
Mhm.
So I chose that path, and we eventually went into bigger markets, but I chose that path because that made sense to me.
Mhm.
I wish I would have had a mentor, but even getting into BIG, that business, I didn't know anybody in the space.
Mhm.
So, I mean, who you reach out to?
Sure.
I
Sure.
mean, that doesn't have an agenda. I'm sure suppliers, but they have an agenda. They want to
Yeah, of
sell me
course.
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they really going to give me great advice?
Sure.
Something that, I want to talk to the guy that skinned his knees,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
right? I mean,
Got beat up, of course.
yeah, got beat up,
Absolutely.
basically went through hard knocks and says, hey, don't do this.
Mhm.
I learned my lesson. So for me, it was kind of just intuition,
Yep.
being leaning in. Whatever I do, I don't do it half baked.
Sure.
Either I'm in the game or I'm not.
Mhm.
And then hire great people
Yeah.
and mentor them. I mean, nobody's got a red cape.
Mhm.
So when you can mentor a team, I've got a lot of team members at BIG that have been working for me for 20 years. They're rock solid. They could finish my sentences. I
Sure.
could finish theirs.
Right.
They know exactly the culture, the priorities. They know how hot we burn.
Mhm.
And so that's a great feeling. I couldn't be down here living a life if I felt like like it was shambles back at our headquarters.
Sure. Sure. Love that.
I think that's a really hard point for people to say, I am not the company. The people are the company. Without them, nothing is successful, and trust them to do things correctly. At what point do you think you really learned that? Was it like, okay, great, I have my athletic wear, footwear store, and we're doing things a little bit differently? Because from what I understand, you're not walking into Dick's Sporting Goods and trying on a pair of sneakers and being like, I like this style. You were doing things already that were way different than that experience, more personalized. And so obviously that took some forethought. And I like what you said about really niching down. You're making it more specific. You're really targeting it down. So at BIG, were you really asking like, what does the business need the most? What are they not able to do themselves? Like, what was that pivotal question?
What was interesting is that you have two great entities at different times of my life. One of them had a complete dispersed workforce. So when you have a dispersed workforce, it's really, you got to work extra hard to build that chemistry. And remember back then there was not internet.
Right. Yeah. Zoom calls, the whole deal.
Yeah. So when you look at BIG, all of my team members are at our headquarters. Much easier to build culture, much easier to build relationships, much easier to get everybody facing the same direction. And so I think it's important for everybody to feel like they're part of something, that everybody's got an oar and they're paddling and they're contributing. And so I always, whenever I get in front of our employees, sometimes I'll cater lunch and we'll have lunch like outside or something like that. But whenever I get an opportunity to speak to them,
Mm-hmm.
I always share my appreciation. I always tell them it takes a village to run this company.
Sure.
And I don't care if you're picking boxes, picking orders in the back room, or if you're our top salesman, you are all the same to me. You are all valuable. You're my second family. I spend as much time with you as I do my own family. And it matters to me that you're getting financially stimulated and mentally stimulated. And the sky's the limit.
Sure.
And, I like promoting within our company too. I
Mhm.
very rarely bring in outside talent. I love promoting within.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the only two positions I outsourced was IT
Mhm.
and my CFO.
Sure. So going through that whole process, I mean, without, doing it with your intuition and your guidance and everything else, what's the biggest bumps you ran into? I mean, what were the things that were the hardest for you to overcome?
Sometimes what I wasn't prepared for in this
Mhm.
industry, I come from the school of, hey, if you're the best supplier and you deliver white glove service,
Mhm.
customer service to corporate America,
Sure.
and in my world, I put myself on the other side of the table. So if I'm talking to somebody, I expect to get good pricing.
Mhm.
I expect to get good service.
Sure.
And I expect to get creativity and hustle.
Mhm.
And that's what I expect. That's an expectation. So when you do that, what I wasn't ready for is some of the relationships. Some of these corporations have executives at levels of procurement or the buyers.
Yeah.
And that's a very fluid space.
Mhm.
They come and go.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you'll get a new person that'll come in that has relationship from his prior life.
It's the nepotism,
And they're bringing
right?
it in.
Yeah.
And he brings them in. All of a sudden you're cut at the knees. You got a
Sure.
$2 or $3 million program.
Mhm.
The middle management that we work with every day, because we're not working with the C-suites every day.
Sure.
The middle management, they love us.
Mhm.
But sometimes you get these executives at the next one or two layers higher
Sure.
that have the buddy system.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden they say, hey, we don't care if you guys love this partner that we've had for the last 2 years. So-and-so wants this company. And literally, I wasn't prepared for that kind of mentality.
Sure.
I was like going, wow, that's hard for me to fathom, because I
Right.
would never do that in my own company,
Mhm.
where all of a sudden if you got great suppliers, they're part of your success.
Sure.
And it's not something just don't kick that to the curb. So, and just minimalize it. And that's how it felt. So I just said, wow, okay. You know what? Then I started incorporating to my training and mentoring with my team members. I said, listen, relationships.
Mhm.
Work on your relationships. When you have corporate America, work on your relationships. Why? Because they will come and go. And that executive is going to land somewhere else. And he or she is going to reach out to you when they have a partner that they walk into that says, this company blows.
Sure.
We need to do an RFP and we need to invite some of the other people that I know that are going to bring their A game.
Mhm.
And they don't go, even those relationships we have, they don't come to me and say, hey, Paul, you guys got this, that you're a shoo-in.
Right.
No, they come in and say, hey, we're going to invite you to the dance. And hey, I hope you win, but if you, the RFP, but if you don't, hey, I know you guys are good. I know you're going to give us your best effort.
Sure.
That's all I ask. Just unlock the door. We'll kick it open.
Yeah.
Just get us invited.
So it's crazy interesting to hear that, because like you had this obstacle, which was the relationships at that C level, and you actually built a program internally to address it and go after it.
You got it. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think you got to be, I think in business, in any business, I don't care what you're doing. I
Mhm.
think you got to be pretty light on your feet.
Sure.
And I think some people just can't make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality. They're afraid to make decisions.
Sure.
I'm not afraid I'm not afraid to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid to say to my people, hey, you guys, you know what? I miscalculated this one. I missed this one. We're
Sure.
not going down that path anymore. I don't sit there and beat it to death.
Sure.
I own it. And I think they respect that. It doesn't, thank God it doesn't happen too often, because I'm not like, it's not the Wild West anymore. You got to be responsible.
Sure.
But it's sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, you're a risk taker, and you're accustomed, you're comfortable in that arena where sometimes you look at what's going on in front of you and how do you try to adapt to it?
Sure.
And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 attempts, but usually it's an evolution.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that it's not that common in all entrepreneurs because a lot of people own businesses now, but I do think it's a quality of true leadership. So I actually want to applaud you on that differentiator. You might not think that way really, but clearly you are. And I wanted to know something maybe a little bit more personal. So clearly you build these amazing, really large, very saleable companies. And with that, you acquire wealth. Do you think that there is a stigma about wealth?
I think I would say a stigma might be a little bit of a strong word, but I would say that I think people are quick to judge. I think if somebody if somebody walked a mile in my trail and really looked through that lens, I think people think those that have been blessed were lucky, or they were born with a place setting in their mouth.
They didn't see the 20 hours a day for
they
years.
didn't see the tough decisions. They didn't see that sometimes you couldn't make payroll. They didn't see that the tough decisions that you had to make, the wins, the losses.
Sure.
They didn't. So, what it all, adds up to is they don't have an appreciation. But I tell my kids and my friends, listen, you can't walk through life like you're going to have a bullseye on your back. And I don't care if you're wealthy, if you're not wealthy. It's about who you are as a character. I can't carry everybody's baggage. If you got an issue with somebody that's been blessed, then that's your own personal issue. That's not for me to explain, not to justify. So I don't get caught up in that. I really don't even, thought doesn't even enter my mind much.
I like that. It really leads into my next point about how your life can change when you realize that you have and you can give back. Because a lot of people, and I think everybody can relate, during COVID, everyone was nervous. The very first few months where things are closing down, every business goes, am I going to go under? Am I going to adapt? What's going to happen? Am I about to go from X number to 0? What do I have to do about that? You said you've had employees for 20 years. Clearly, you're a loyalist. Clearly, you have a vision of who needs to stay and that you don't want to cut any of those people. They believe in you and you believe in them and you want to help make sure that you don't have to do that. Saying that, obviously, having some accumulation, something in the bank, allows you a little bit of space. But it also, at some point when you're able to give back. What are the ways that you give back? How has that changed for you as you've grown in adulthood and in business relationship and in here in Arizona?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that in 2 ways because COVID was
scary.
COVID was there was no blueprint to follow on COVID. So I remember the panic in my leadership team. I mean, you got mothers, fathers, you've got children that aren't going to school. You have so many variables on the table that you have to consider as a CEO. And I remember being in a leadership meeting and I had to say, listen, because it was just becoming unhinged. I said, listen, my job is to make sure that you all have a job when we get through the other side of this.
Sure.
That gives me goosebumps. I mean, everybody can relate to this. It doesn't matter if you work at Circle K or are in business for yourself or you have 200 employees. It doesn't matter. Everybody was worried.
Every day. And it was different worries. The housewife with 3 kids to the family that's trying to make ends meet. I mean, I had to be open to everything. But I had to make a declaration. This is my job. I can't take on everybody's individual family crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can guarantee you is that you will all have a job when we come through the other side. You're going to get furloughed. But would you believe that, again, being an entrepreneur, having factories in China, I had 8 employees that came to work. I still went to work every day.
Sure.
And I had 8 employees. Would you believe that the highest month of sales we've ever had, because I said, hey, everybody, call our factories. We're going to get in the mask business. And we started cutting and sewing masks.
Wow.
That's great. Great
And
transition.
so we stayed on it. We were selling plexiglass to restaurants, to
Wow.
Yeah.
to health
So
club chains.
smart.
Yeah. What a
Flexibility.
transition, right?
Hey, and it's like, hey, but you got to lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's going to be here and it's going to be gone in a flash. And if you guys remember, like at first it was, the KN90
Yeah.
was a
Mhm.
mask, right? And the government they didn't know if they were coming or going.
No idea.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They
it was a mess.
changed with
Hot
the
mess.
weather.
Yeah.
It was
Mhm.
a hot mess, exactly. And so we had to be very nimble. And I was saying, hey, listen, you guys, you had to really vest. So I was buying 1 million masks.
Sure.
We were cutting and sewing 2-ply masks that
Right.
you fit around your cloth that you could
Mhm.
wash. And I remember telling my team, hey, you guys, right now, everybody just wants a mask.
Yeah.
They want a mask or they want a shield. They want something. I go, get ready, because what they're going to want is they're going to want their logo on it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I go, they're not ready. Right now, everybody's panicking. The world's in a cold sweat.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually they're going to get all the masks to everybody, and they're going to say, okay, now that we're in the masks, let's give people something that has our brand on it.
Sure.
They're going to wear a mask. Let's let them make sure it says Cargill on it or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
right? So we did that, and that wave was about probably 90 days
Mm-hmm.
where you had furlough and all this uncertainty, where you had to lean into it. And so, I was super blessed to be able to hit that high. I was never expecting to. It was just by the grace
Mm-hmm.
that we reacted. We were right. We invested right, and we catch, turn, and shoot.
Love it.
Now with going to your next question, which was, say, the philanthropic side of things. I think today's workforce out there wants to be a contributor.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they don't know how to go about it. And one of the things that I try to do is, I say, I have a way. I say, hey, you need to be corporately responsible.
Sure.
And corporately responsible to me means that you got to step outside of your curb
Mm-hmm.
and do things that are meaningful. So we did my soft spot is children
Mm-hmm.
that drew the short straw. I just, hey, you know what? I think it's unfair,
Sure.
some of the hands that little kids are dealt, and I go for the people that they go without every
Mm-hmm.
day. So like I took a elementary school, grades kindergarten through 7th grade. It was a school that was sanctioned as poverty. And I went to the fire department and I said, hey, I want to give every child in that school a brand new winter coat. And let me tell you,
Wow.
everybody in Minneapolis, you
Yeah.
want a winter coat.
Wow.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
And so I said, hey, so I talked to the chief of the fire department in
Mhm.
Minneapolis. I said, hey, will you mind driving a fire truck and parking it in the parking
Sure.
lot?
How cool is that,
Yes.
right?
I said,
Wow.
little kids love.
Yeah.
I go,
Yeah.
let's excuse the classrooms, have them
Mhm.
come down. And then and this is where cultural building, I had my own employees
Oh yeah. Handing them out.
handing them out. Because
Yeah.
why? Because it fills their heart.
Yes.
It
Sure.
fills their heart. Give them an opportunity. Make it, hey, sign up. First 20 people. Here's what we're doing. We're going to hand out coats to little children.
Yeah.
And so these little kids, they're so cute. They're so cute.
Loving it.
And some of them had never owned a new winter coat.
Sure.
So the classrooms would come down. We would get them all fitted. We'd take a little Sharpie pen, write their name on the
Uh-huh.
inside of their pocket so that
Yep.
they get mixed up with, there was another duplicate jacket.
Sure.
And then they'd go outside and take a picture in front of the fire truck.
Yeah.
I mean, go back to the room. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's heart is full at the end of the day.
Yep.
And we love doing things like that. I don't like just writing checks.
Mm-hmm.
that to me is not fulfilling.
Sure.
We just did something. Just today, I was on a call. We donated 10,000 pairs of socks, nice socks.
Sure.
Like the brand was Fit Sock, which is an expensive sock. Worked with them, and we handed out 10,000 pairs of socks to homeless shelters, Dorothy Day Center, homeless shelters. We dropped off. We're going to be shipping them out to everybody because because last year we did caps and mittens. So we try to do something that's going to make an impact.
Sure.
Something that's a need that slips through the cracks.
I love
that's what we try to do.
I mean, it's been a fantastic conversation. Great place to wrap it up. Thank you for being here, man. Thanks for being part of Scottsdale. Amber, thank you for being here as well.
Yeah.
This has been great. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Man.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And that's been today's episode on the Scottsdale Living podcast with Paul Taunton from the Business Impact Group. Catch you next time.